imagine that because some of the things they're talking about now are some of the things I used to kind of believe before I
Yeah.
actually looked into the actual thing
Yeah.
because I was accepting their premises and some of their flawed data that they were basing some of these things on. So yeah.
Well, it's interesting too. I don't know if you saw my exchange with my friend Edward, but it was on the James Lindsay video with Benjamin Boyce. And in the comments we discussed, because he, I was a Catholic, he was a Mormon, both turned atheist, and we talked about like our sort of turning away from religion and what caused all this and everything. And James Lindsay brought up in the discussion, there was something about the religious people call it a God-shaped, what is it, a God-shaped hole in the heart or something.
Yeah.
And it's the idea that, oh, what's lacking in these people's lives is religion. They need it. And then what James Lindsay was saying, that this has actually been studied further in depth, and they've tried to figure out, why do certain people gravitate towards religion, others don't seem to? Like, for example, with us, I mean, we talk about the different types of atheists. Like, there are people who will go on and on about how superstitious and irrational Christianity is, but then they'll adhere to everything that Marx said and not question it. There are objectivists like this too, that like I've been influenced by Ayn Rand, but there are people who will take everything she said as gospel and not question it. So there's the theory that certain people are drawn towards this religious thinking. Now, there's different theories about why. Now, Edward wondered if it's more of a group thing, like people want to feel solidarity with the group, like, oh, I'm part of a group, I have a sense of belonging, oh, there's safety in numbers, all that. With other people, I wonder, is it a lack of confidence? Is it they don't trust their own reason and ability to understand the world, so it's easier just to defer to other people and let other people make the decisions? I think it could be a bit of both. I think it depends on the person in the case. And I guess this is what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious, the idea that, oh, all these people are following a religion, they themselves haven't read the Bible. Like your bell curve example, like there's people on the far right of the bell curve who've read everything in the Bible, can repeat it back to you from memory, know it well. There's people on the left who will say, I haven't read it, I just follow my family, and most people are somewhere in between. I think that collective unconscious is largely in between. It's well, millions of people are saying this, must be right. Why should I do my own research and listen? And again, that could be lack of confidence and reason. It could be some innate intelligence. It could be, the whole safety in numbers. It could be some combination of the things, but I think it's a very interesting theme. And I wonder, as that gets further explored, what will come up.
Yeah. I mean, because where does this come from? And I think we touched on this a bit in the last conversation, was how when a being comes to be, when a sentient being comes to be, it's existed. With humans, we normally exist as babies in the world, engaging with things. Of course, when you're in the womb, you have some sort of awareness of the location that you're in. And in the womb, even if you did become aware, you would be aware that you are not a single being. Like you are a being that is relying on another being for existence. Then you come out from that, you're separated from that being. Again, I don't know how the memory works at that point. I don't think you're completely conscious or even writing that stuff down. But it comes to a point when a baby starts realizing that, oh, these things that they were aware of hand movements. Sometimes a baby will just freeze up and just like all of a sudden just seem to disconnect, just stare at their hand. It's like, wait, this thing was here before. Like I recognize that thing from somewhere. Like I've seen this thing before. So all of a sudden you start realizing like all these things around you, these senses are in part that I thought were just one thing. It's me. This is me, and that is somebody else. That's mom. That's my dad. That's my sister. That's the building I'm in. That's the carpet. That's the sky. You start realizing that I'm an individual within a collective, and I think you start trying to figure out how are you parts of different collectives. Like so, I think that could come to the thing where it's like the individualism versus the collectivism. I think that's one of the basic type of things where things either lean individualist or collectivist. In general, how everything we look at in the world goes towards those things. Is this a single thing, or is this a single experience, or is this a group of things? It's a group of experiences. And I think it's trying to find your place as an individual in different groups. And that's an entire structure, as you were mentioning. And I don't necessarily think it's a God-shaped hole. It's more like a misunderstanding shaped hole, or like an unknown, like a known unknown shaped hole. And then we normally fit God in there. And then there's some other.
What I wonder, is it a holdover? It's an evolutionary psychology thing. It's a holdover from earlier times where, if you go far back in our history, man didn't understand the world. So of course that's where religion came from, but also you had to stick with a group of people because that's how you survived. And that we're not at a point where the world is so individuated yet where that's evolved out of us. It's some certain people may fall back on that. Now, I've mentioned before about how they wonder if Asperger's high functioning autism is the next form of evolution. The more individualism, logical considered, some people would argue logical to a fault. I obviously reject that premise, but you get the idea. But they've wondered, like, is it that we're going more towards individualism, more in that direction, because we're not in that world of, okay, we don't understand the world. We need religion to explain things, and we need to stick with our tribe or we're going to get killed. Because we've been shifting away from that over time, that's sort of gradually evolving out of us. It's just a question of who still has those instincts and who doesn't, but we're gradually moving away from that. That's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, and I think that also comes with, because humans were humans for a long time. This whole idea that people are like, oh, religion's been with us since humanity began. No, not at all.
No.
We were sentient beings, animals that were different, very differentiated from the rest of the animal kingdom, for the rest of the earthlings, for millennia. I think for at least thousands of years before the first tribes started developing religions, like those first sculptures. They probably had religions before they were sculpting things like that, quasi religions or proto religions. But that whole idea, no, you can't exist without that, without it being a religious thing. And I think that's, as we got more developed, we started interacting with topics and things that we knew existed, but we were so beyond our ability to actually understand that once we got to actually having known unknowns, where we know it rains for some reasons, but we have no clue why those reasons occur. But then there's this massive set of things that we know wouldn't occur unless we acted on it. So at that point in time, we're like, okay, so this other stuff probably has, just like we know that we can create actions that don't quote unquote naturally occur unless we act on them, then the basic normal state of existence is not raining. So when it rains, which is different from the norm, we think, okay, that's something has happened to change that other thing. And then somebody might have been like, oh, that's how we kind of developed this whole idea of now who is the being, who is the creature, who is the thing that's actually creating that in some different way. So I don't know if that's some of that.
But I just point this out with the Marxists and similar types, because it's like they go on and on about how superstitious and irrational religion, especially Christianity, is, but then they'll dogmatically follow all this stuff without question. And they also don't, you can read Murray Rothbard's Marx as a religious eschatologist. They don't see all the religious themes in the writing itself. And if you read Marx's earlier stuff, there's a lot of fire and brimstone, the world is ending, and Marx even wanted to be a poet earlier on. They talked about he wanted to be the next Faust, so he was way more of a romantic than people think, despite his so-called hard-nosed scientific socialism.
Look at all these data points. Marx, and then I'm not saying Marx is exactly the same as Hitler or anything, but we have these failed artists who went on to do certain social political things. So I think the thing to do right now is you could go down below and hit the link to my merchandise store and support some of my art designs, because you need to go out there and find an artist and support them and make sure they actually stick being an artist instead of entering politics, because it doesn't really seem to lead to good results. But yeah, the whole thing I was talking with the unknown thing, that's a similar thing with the Marxists. It's a similar thing with the communists. Like I saw this one tweet. Somebody was posted this and said that picture of the Evergreen. I think it's Evergreen ship. I don't know. There's a name actual ship. It's the Evergreen company that was stuck in the Suez Canal. It has been unlodged, I think, earlier today. Yeah. There was that popular picture that was making a lot of memes with the ship over there, and then a digger like on the side trying to dig it out there. Yeah. And then people are like, someone's like, oh, talking about raising the minimum wage. And then now the entire world economy, or this massive part of the world economy is it's depending on this unskilled labor. And it's like, who thinks somebody driving a digger is unskilled labor? Like that is a skilled labor. So these people just don't understand economics. So that's the kind of thing for them. They know enough about the world economics. They know that if they have this thing, it's coming from somewhere else. Like someone's like, oh, there's going to be a toilet paper shortage. And someone's like, there's no way the United States of America doesn't make toilet paper locally. Like they could make it locally, but they're getting the wood pulp from somewhere. I mean, they're going to get some other parts, maybe even just the glue that's it, or the plastic that covers it. There's other things. It's not just like, oh, everything's in one location. No. So people are aware of a global economy. They're aware of a globalized world. But they don't necessarily understand how some of these things will work. They have phones and they realize they don't know any one person in their world, in their life, that could have made the entire phone. So they understand they must be these massive markets and industries of moving pieces for you to get the thing. Like that really good story on Fee.com of the pencil, of how different parts come
iPencil,
to make a pencil. They understand, they are aware of that, but they don't understand it. So they just insert that kind of religious idea of socialism, where if I need something, we need to create a system where I get it, where I don't really have to, I shouldn't really have to do much to just get the thing, because there's so many things out there and they don't understand that thing. And I think that's how they get to some of these ideas. People understand there's injustice. Oh, we don't really understand how this injustice happens. So critical theory, there's this oppressive stack type of thing. It's a mess. And in my experience, people have been trying to understand these things, and this is part of the process of Stephen and I trying to understand these things, and that's why we engage in these conversations and get the time to actually read and have these conversations and share them with you guys, gals, and everything else in between that are listening. Thank you for listening. This has been a clip from an actual longer recording that I'll try to leave a link to on the screen or somewhere around here where you're listening to this.
Presents. 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 Presents.
Peasants.
Okay. Okay.